community members who'd like to stand up, please stand up now.
What? Yeah, you couldn't see her face.
With the different mics up here, these are, you can still hear, or do you need people to pick them up?
I don't think anybody should need to pick them up.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can watch it.
Okay, the Korean pet store will arrive 11:30.
Okay, so he's not. Nice to meet you.
아 저기 남 어떻게 바깥은 괜찮으세요?
Sorry. Do you want the speakers on the side or is it on the mic up here? No, they're gonna come up here, but I'm just, they're just a little bit less. Yeah, they're gonna all come up.
I like this.
뭐 편하신 대로 하세요. 뭐 불편하시면 앉으셔도 되고 고생하면 멋있으신데.
저기 가라고?
네.
그럼 가지 마.
일로 가운데
You
오시죠.
know, we don't have,
선생님 말씀하세요.
yeah, let's make it less Korean on one side.
Oh,
Can we mix it up, mix it up, guys?
That's correct.
Thank you, yeah, this looks good. Thank you, I was like, let's make it more, yeah. Make it more, yeah, it's something more casual.
Excuse me, I'm gonna check one thing, okay? I'm gonna switch this out.
Hey, speakers.
You need double extra card? I do, man. I went through 2 sets right here. Here.
drop one more microphone. Thank you.
Good morning, welcome. We're going to have our speakers go first. There will be no questions, but there's an opportunity to do individual interviews after the press conference. First, I'd like to bring up Executive Director Daniela Rodriguez.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Daniela Rodriguez, and I am the Executive Director of Migrant Equity Southeast. On Thursday, September 4, my team and I woke up to the devastating news. Immigration and Customs Enforcement was a Hyundai. From 11 a.m. until almost 11 p.m., it was chaotic. Not just for the immigrant workers, but for the entire community as a whole. Helicopters and drones circled the facility. Roads were blocked, and our phones rang non-stop. Calls from desperate family members looking for their loved ones. The calls have not stopped since then. We still have people calling our office, terrified and uncertain and heartbroken. Many of these people had legal work permits, yet they still felt intimidated, mistreated and abused by ICE. Make no mistake, we cannot call ourselves a civilized society if the very people who build our homes, our cars, and our futures are treated this way. We cannot call ourselves a civilized society if the very people who keep coastal Georgia thriving are treated this way. Almost 500 workers were arrested, including people from South Korea, Guatemala, Colombia, Chile, Mexico, Ecuador, and Venezuela. Workers have said that their phones were confiscated and that they were forced to sign documents. ICE agents, heavily armed officers, use both physical and psychological intimidation tactics. These actions go beyond the workplace. Fathers, sons have been turned away from their family. We even had a case of a pregnant lady who had to hide to protect her future and the future of her baby. This is more than just immigration status. These ICE raids expose an inhumane system that criminalizes immigrant labor, will billion-dollar companies continue to profit. We are at a crossroads where we must confront a labor system that continues to allow companies like Hyundai to profit through subcontractors will deny responsibility when workers are harmed. We reject the excuse, they weren't our employees. If a supply chain delivered workers to your site, those workers are your responsibility. We also reject the federal administration's narrative that this raid was meant to hold Hyundai accountable for illegal hiring practices. If that was truly the case, why has Hyundai faced no repercussions? Why is it only the working class, community members, people who contribute to our economy, the only ones that are facing harm? So today, we're calling for three things. First, accountability from employers, Hyundai and subcontractors. Second, actions from our local officials, no silence. And third, dignity and due process from federal agencies. We call for the release of all immigrants. We call for the release of all parents, caregivers, and workers with work authorization and pending relief. At Migrant Equity Southeast, we're not reacting to the moment. At Migrant Equity Southeast, we're not reacting to what is happening now. We are reacting to a history of abuse by Hyundai and the subcontractors. And to the media, we ask you to not treat this as a one-day story. Come back tomorrow and the next day. Sustained coverage is the only way to hold powerful institutions accountable. At Coastal Georgia, we understand the immense effort that it takes to build and maintain global logistic systems. Our resilience is real, but so is our love. The kind that protects communities. Georgia is home for many immigrants. When I think of Georgia, the place where I grew up, this is not the Georgia that we deserve. This is not the Georgia that we deserve. People are watching, not just in the country, but everywhere. We are much better than that. And we refuse to the narrative that we must be separated. Both Latinos and Koreans, we demand accountability. It's all of us or none of us. And together we are stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela. My name is Jenny. I am the labor rights organizer here at MESE. We must understand that these raids did not happen in isolation. Hyundai has a documented history of labor violations. Just this spring, 2 workers were killed in preventable incidents at the same plant. Their deaths should have been a wake-up call for change. Instead, workers continue to pay the price with their safety, their freedom, and now their families. The truth is simple. This raid exposes a broken system where billion-dollar corporations benefit while workers bear the risk. Immigrant labor has been exploited, endangered, and now criminalized, with no accountability for those at the top. And the impact is devastating. Fathers, sons, sisters, daughters are missing from their homes. Pregnant workers ran into the woods to hide, risking their lives. These are not just workers. They are our neighbors, our friends, the people we sit next to at church. What happened at Hyundai is not just an immigration issue, it is a labor rights crisis. No worker should fear being met with militarized force at their job. No family should fear being torn apart for showing up to work. This is why we're calling for transparency, accountability, and immediate support for those impacted. And we need the public's help. Here are 3 ways you can take action. Call the hotline, report ICE activity, or seek help at 912-429-7951. You can also donate. Support families with urgent legal, housing, and financial aid. You can also volunteer. Offer legal, language, fundraising, and mutual aid support. This is a pivotal moment. We can no longer allow corporations to exploit workers. While the government militarizes our communities, we must demand dignity, safety, and justice for every worker in Georgia.
I'm Sarah Park, president of the Korean American Coalition. I stand here today on behalf of our community, alongside with many others who cares about fairness, dignity, and justice. Georgia celebrated Hyundai LG plan as a $7.6 billion investment, the largest in our state's history, promising more than 8,500 jobs. For years, this project was praised as a model of a partnership between Georgia and Korea, a symbol of economic growth and international cooperation. But that promises has now been overshadowed. On September 4th, ICE carried out the largest single-site raid in its history at Hyundai LG plant near Savannah. Instead of partnership, the world saw 475 workers shackled and treated as criminals. America has the right to enforce its law, but our Constitution also demands due process and human dignity for every person. Lawyers, interpreters, fair hearings, and access to claims are not optional. They are fundamental rights. America is strongest when it protects both the rules of law and human dignity. We cannot sacrifice one for the other. The Hyundai LG plant required highly specialized subcontractors and technicians to move the project forward. Visas were needed, but they were not granted at the scale required. Everyone, from the companies to government leaders, understood this reality. When technicians entered the US on a short-term visitor's visa to meet urgent need, it was not about individual wrongdoing, but it was about the system that failed to align immigrant policy and economic promises. Workers should not be scapegoated for filling the very gaps we all created as society. Our charter flight may transfer people out of the country, but it does not solve the deeper problem. Families have been torn apart, communities have been shaken, and the trust that we once linked Georgia and Korea and the United States and Korea has been broken. Workers and communities are now not disposable. Do not strip away the dignity of 475 lives and its family that are here and far. While I was in Savannah, I visited communities that were confused and afraid. I met with nonprofit leaders, partners who've been working tirelessly throughout night without rest. And I saw local leaders stepping forward in a remarkable ways. And what I witnessed was clear. These individuals were not criminals. They were a part of our society, neighbors, parents, brothers and sisters, and people who worship with at churches. They are no different from our workers across the nation who simply wants to provide their families and society and build a future with dignity. If government has recruited investment and if corporation made invested, then they also need to bear the responsibility to protect the workers and communities who sustain that investment. They must not shift blame onto workers. They must not walk away from responsibility. That is why we are calling for due process, real access to legal counsel, and concrete support for families and immigrant communities. We also need long-term solution, pathway that prevent this form from ever happening again, because it will happen again. Politicians, leaders, and communities must act now to create support system to show up and to take responsibility. In Savannah, volunteers, community organizers, and local leaders are already stepping up, raising their voices and finding ways to support those most impacted. And most importantly, this is not just about Koreans, workers. It's about Latino workers that were also detained. Their families and communities who have already been suffering in a pain for a long time, once again, they are suffering now. Injustice against the one community is injustice against us all. Our responses must be one of solidarity across all communities so that no one faces this injustice alone. The raid at Hyundai LG plant has shaken Savannah, Georgia, the United States, and Korea. If we stay silent, we accept fear, broken trust, and injustice. But if we act together, we show the world that America protects both rule of laws and the dignity of people. That is what America we believe in, and that is standard we must demand today together. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Meredith Yoon, and I am the Litigation Director at Asian Americans Advancing Justice Atlanta. Asian Americans Advancing Justice Atlanta condemns ICE's raid and arrest of nearly 500 workers from the Hyundai worksite in Elabel, Georgia, in the strongest of terms. ICE's actions have torn through communities, leaving families unsafe, uncertain, and afraid. Many of the workers ICE detained had work permits and other forms of documentation. Documented or not, no one should be subjected to militarized raids in their workplace. No family should live in fear of being torn apart. According to reports, ICE and other law enforcement agencies descended upon the worksite, heavily armed and flanked with helicopters, drones, and military vehicles, blank warrant forms in hand, showing that they were planning to detain individuals indiscriminately. By 6:30 p.m., 7 buses had been filled with workers from South Korea, Mexico, Colombia, Ecuador, Chile, and Venezuela to be detained. Many of those arrested were taken to the Folkestone ICE Processing Center, a detention center in South Georgia with a record of human rights abuses. Despite these abuses being well documented, ICE recently expanded its contract at the facility, which is run by the GEO Group, a private prison corporation, tripling Folkestone's capacity to 3,000 beds and making it one of the largest detention centers in the country. This expansion, like last week's raid, is unacceptable and morally bankrupt, and gives ICE the infrastructure to carry out the administration's xenophobic and racist mass deportation agenda. Lawyers with Asian Americans Advancing Justice Atlanta are working with other civil rights organizations across the country to assist detained workers and their families in pursuing their legal options. While the administration ramps up its attacks on immigrant communities in Georgia, local organizations and our national allies are prepared, and we are fighting back against the government's illegal acts. We echo demands from the community for all those arrested to be released, and we call upon state and local governments to take strong positions against these atrocious attacks on our communities. Together, we will push back against these injustices and stand up for the dignity of every worker and every family in our beloved community. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Julia Solorzano. I am the Legal and Policy Director at Centro de los Derechos del Migrante, or CDM. CDM stands in solidarity with all the organizations present here and with all the workers who were detained in last Thursday's raid at the Hyundai plant in Elabel, Georgia. CDM is an organization that partners with migrant workers to build worker power, advocate for fair labor migration policies, and ensure that borders are not a barrier to justice. The Hyundai supply chain has a documented history of labor violations. CDM is currently representing workers in 2 class action lawsuits in Georgia, where workers in the Hyundai supply chain were defrauded through a bait and switch scheme and experienced retaliation when they spoke out about poor working conditions. Employers in the Hyundai supply chain try to avoid all responsibility for their workers' well-being by hiring workers through staffing agencies and subcontractors. At this very site where last Thursday's raid occurred, workers and their representatives have documented an array of abuses, including worker deaths. Yet instead of holding employers accountable, the Trump administration is further victimizing workers. Migrant workers face high rates of wage theft, discrimination, unsafe workplaces, sexual harassment, and assault. Many of these abuses go unreported because workers fear immigration consequences if they speak out. Unscrupulous employers exploit that fear, threatening to weaponize the immigration system to silence workers. Workplace raids, like what we saw last Thursday, deepen that fear. These raids are designed to terrorize migrant workers. They are militaristic, aggressive, and often violent.
In past workplace raids, workers have been racially profiled and in some instances physically assaulted by officers. By ramping up immigration enforcement in this way, the government enables abusive employers to continue exploiting workers. In fact, many of the workplaces targeted for raids since 2018 already had documented histories of labor violations, like the Hyundai plant in Elabel. And yet, time and again, we see that employers face no comparable accountability. That imbalance sends a clear message. When ICE comes to a workplace, it is the workers, not their abusive employers, who pay the price. Time and again, workers are handcuffed, profiled, arrested, jailed, deported, and separated from their families. We demand that our representatives focus on ensuring that employers like Hyundai are held accountable and respect the rights of those who work in their supply chain, rather than making workers more vulnerable to abuse and retaliation through actions like last Thursday's raid. We will continue to organize with our communities to protect the rights of migrant workers, and we demand that our representatives do the same.
Good morning, and thank you all so much for being here. I'm State Representative Ann Allen Westbrook. I represent Georgia House District 163. You are in Georgia House District 163 this morning. It is my great honor to stand with all of these leaders and all of these organizations. I know for a fact that Mese has been working nonstop since Thursday morning, probably haven't slept. They have immediately gone into action to support the needs of this community, specifically our immigrant neighbors. And I'm certain our coalition members who are represented here have done the same. I look at this situation as a legislator in the Georgia State House, and I see no winners in this situation. My colleagues here have spoken very eloquently about how hard this hit our immigrant communities. Certainly, they are first and foremost in our minds, those most closely affected by this situation, those who ended up in ICE detention. And I think the context matters at this time. This is ICE detention at a time when ICE is ever expanding, ever resourced, while every other agency that supports Americans is less and less resourced. This is ICE detention at a time when due process is out the window. We know that there have been immigrants who have been sent to foreign prisons on the basis of the tattoos they had. We know that there are immigrants, undocumented folks at risk of being sent to foreign countries to which they have absolutely no connection. So I think it's important to keep due process in the forefront here and the rule of law in the forefront. The rule of law protects all of us or it protects none of us. And we have to care about the rule of law at all times, including now, when vulnerable folks are most affected. But I do look at this as a Georgia state legislator, and I think of all that Georgians have invested in this project, all that Georgians have invested in building a relationship with Korea, a business relationship, a diplomatic relationship, a friendship, and how much this situation on Thursday, this raid, undermines that friendship. And I think about all the costs that have been felt in this community, our water woes, our traffic. There's, growth brings discomfort as well as the hoped for prosperity. But no one has won in this situation. Not our immigrant neighbors, certainly, not worker safety, not environmental or other types of legal compliance, and certainly not Georgians. So it is my honor to stand with these folks today. I urge more elected leaders to speak out and stand with us and support these leaders and the immigrant communities that they speak for at this time when it's desperately needed. Thank you.
So for our last message, we can't do this alone. Coastal Georgia is in the spotlight everywhere. As a person that was raised in South Georgia, I refuse to let my home be known as a place of hate. Coastal Georgia will be known as a place of love because that is what we are. But we can't do this alone. So at Migrant Equity Southeast, we ask you for help. We ask you for your support. So for everyone that is watching, pay attention to what's happening. because on September 4th, it happened to immigrant workers. And in the future, we don't know who will be next. So please, we ask you for your support. Together, we can do a lot more. Together, we can stand up for the rights of immigrants and refugees. Thank you.
We're going to close the press conference, but speakers are available for individual interviews. Thank you.